I am out of here.
The glass shattered before Ethan even realized he'd thrown it. It hit the wall, exploding into a spray of glittering shards that fell at his feet like broken stars. His chest heaved, his breath sharp and ragged, and his fingers trembled against the edge of the table. Everyone at the party froze. Music paused, conversations cut off, and every eye locked onto the man now standing in the center of the room. Ethan Hale, billionaire heir, golden boy of the Hale dynasty. But Ethan didn't care who was staring. He was staring too, staring at the woman in front of him. The woman he once married as a joke. The woman he had married because he thought she could never rise to his level. The woman he took $5 million dare to wed. Maya. Except she wasn't the Maya he remembered. This Maya stood tall, laced in confidence, dressed in a fitted emerald gown that traced every curve with elegant precision. Her hair fell in soft waves, her skin glowed, her eyes sparked, not with pain, not with naivety, but with power. A calm, silent, devastating kind of power. Ethan's lips parted, words forming but failing. He managed only a breathless, Maya? She didn't blink. She didn't smile. She didn't even flinch at his broken glass outburst. She simply looked at him as if he were a stranger in a crowded room. And that moment, those 3 seconds, felt like punishment and justice colliding in one tightening noose around Ethan's throat. But this wasn't where the story began. It began a year earlier. Back when Maya Thompson, soft, round, gentle, painfully shy, walked into the Hale Cafe with a pink notebook and a warm cinnamon scent from the bakery she worked at. Back when Ethan Hale, rich, adored, reckless, leaned back in his leather seat, surrounded by his equally arrogant friends, bored and looking for the next thrill. Bro, you can't even settle down, Tyler laughed, nudging Ethan with a glass. You're all talk. Yeah, another friend smirked. All these models in your DMs and you still can't pick one. Ethan rolled his eyes. I just don't like wasting time on people who bring nothing to the table. Then how about this? Tyler lifted his beer, grinning wickedly. The next girl who walks through that door, you marry her. Ethan laughed. What? Marry a stranger? Unless you're scared, Tyler taunted. Ethan straightened in his seat. No one challenged him, not like that. I'm not scared of anything. Good, Tyler said. Because if you do it, we'll give you $5 million. There was a chorus of gasps and laughter around the table. Ethan looked at them, then at the cafe door, then back. You're serious? As serious as your trust fund, Tyler shrugged. Before we continue fully into the story, please like this video and subscribe. Also, tell us in the comments where you are watching from. New York, London, maybe South Africa, Nigeria or Jamaica? We want to know. Ethan took a slow sip of his drink, smirking. Fine. I'll do it. And then the bell above the cafe door jingled. Maya stepped in. Her sweater was oversized and a bit faded. Her glasses slightly tilted. Her bag heavy on one shoulder. She looked harmless, simple, soft, like someone who'd apologize for taking up too much space. Tyler snorted. Perfect. Ethan followed their gaze. At first he didn't react. She was ordinary. Round cheeks, full figure, gentle eyes. Nothing like the glamorous women he usually entertained. But ordinary was exactly what made the dare easy. A low-hanging fruit. A guaranteed win. He stood, smoothing the designer jacket over his shoulders and walked toward her. She didn't notice him until he spoke softly. Hi. You look a little lost. Maya nearly jumped. Oh. I was just looking for a table. He smiled, too polished, too perfect. You can sit with me. Her eyes widened. With you? Are you sure? He nodded, charming as ever. Absolutely. She hesitated, but then she smiled, a shy, hopeful smile, and followed him. It should have been a warning. A smile like that deserved sincerity. It deserved respect. But Ethan wasn't offering either. Back at the table, Tyler smirked at the spectacle while Ethan pretended to listen to Maya talk about pastries, dreams of opening a bakery, and her mother's old recipe book. She spoke with a gentle passion that Ethan barely heard. He was too busy calculating how fast he could make her fall for him. And fall she did. Too easily. Too beautifully. Days turned into weeks, and Maya's cheeks warmed every time Ethan called. She believed him. Believed every compliment, every gesture, every warm lie he wrapped around her like a blanket. To her, he was a dream she never thought she deserved. To him, she was a trophy he'd soon cash in for $5 million. They got married in a small civil ceremony. Maya's hands trembled as she held his. She whispered, I can't believe this is real. Ethan smiled for the cameras, leaned down and kissed her forehead. Later that night, after the ceremony, after the photos, after the dinner, Maya stood behind the staircase of his mansion, having gone back to retrieve her forgotten purse. That's when she heard it. Ethan's voice drifting from the living room. Easiest 5 million I'll ever make. Laughter followed. Tyler's. The others. All mocking. All cruel. Maya froze. Her heartbeat stopped. Her breath stopped. Her world stopped. Bro, Tyler laughed, you actually married her. Of course, Ethan replied. She's harmless. She'd believe anything. She's lucky I even looked her way. Maya's fingers clutched the staircase railing, her nails digging into the wood. Tears blurred her vision, hot and immediate. Her husband, married her for a bet. A bet. The purse slipped from her hand and hit the floor. She covered her mouth instantly, terrified the sound would give her away. And still she stayed silent. Silent even when her heart cracked. Silent when she crept upstairs to their room. Silent when she lay on the side of the bed he wouldn't touch. Silent. Because she didn't know how to scream loudly enough to match the pain. But silence was not forgiveness. Silence was the seed of what she would become. This was only the beginning. For weeks, Maya lived like a ghost in her own marriage. She cooked breakfast Ethan never ate. She asked gentle questions he barely answered. She smiled at him even when her eyes were swollen from crying in the shower. She played the role of the devoted wife because she didn't know what else to do. What did someone do when their entire life had been built on a lie? When their love had been the punchline of a cruel joke? Ethan didn't notice the change in her. Or maybe he did and simply didn't care. Either way, he drifted through their home like she was furniture. Something useful, something quiet, something unimportant. He came home late. He never touched her. Never invited her anywhere. Never looked at her long enough to learn the pattern of freckles on her cheek. But she saw him. She saw everything. Every indifference. Every snicker behind her back when he thought she wasn't listening. Every time he wiped her lipstick off his cheek as though her affection was dirt. The housekeeper, Mrs. Clare, was the only one who truly saw Maya. One morning, as she placed a cup of tea in front of her, she asked softly, "Madam, are you doing okay?" Maya forced a smile. "I'm fine." "You're not," the woman said gently. "You're shrinking." The words cracked something in Maya's chest. She looked down at her reflection in the tea, tired, fragile, broken. Shrinking. That was exactly what she'd been doing. Shrinking so Ethan wouldn't walk away faster. Shrinking so his friends wouldn't laugh harder. Shrinking so she could survive each day without screaming. But surviving wasn't living. And living with a man who never wanted her was its own kind of slow death. One night, Ethan came home smelling of perfume and alcohol. Maya stood in the kitchen, gripping the counter, her knuckles white. He paused when he saw her. "Why are you still awake?" She swallowed. "I made dinner. I thought maybe we could eat together." Ethan loosened his tie, unimpressed. "I already ate." Her heart sank. "Oh, okay." He walked past her, but she didn't move. She didn't even blink. Something inside her snapped loose, and before she could stop herself, she said, "Ethan, do you ever think about us?" He stopped. Turned slowly. "Us." He repeated the word like it tasted strange. "Maya, we're fine. Why are you overthinking? You know how emotional you can get." The dismissal stung. "I'm not overthinking. You're making drama out of nothing." He waved a hand. "Go to sleep." She stared at him. Really stared. And for the first time she saw not a husband, not even a man, just a boy wrapped in money and ego, afraid of emotional responsibility. Afraid of sincerity. She whispered, "Do you regret marrying me?" Ethan's jaw tightened. He didn't answer. And that silence was loud enough. He went upstairs without another word. Maya stood alone in the dim kitchen, tears slipping down her cheeks, dripping into the untouched plates she had spent hours preparing. The food grew cold. So did her hope. That night, she lay in bed staring at the ceiling while Ethan slept on the far edge, facing away from her. She whispered into the darkness, "Why wasn't I enough for you?" He didn't move. He didn't hear. He never heard. But the universe did. Because the next morning when Maya woke up, something inside her had changed. It wasn't anger. It wasn't revenge. It was emptiness, heavy, suffocating emptiness that whispered a truth she'd never dared consider. She was dying in this house. Not physically. Emotionally. And she didn't want to die. 2 days later, while Ethan was away on a weekend trip with friends, some business meeting she wasn't invited to, Maya stood in their bedroom holding a small suitcase. She packed quietly, 2 dresses, her mother's cookbook, her notebook, the necklace her father gave her, and a pair of shoes she hoped to grow confident enough to wear one day. She didn't take much. She didn't need much. As she zipped her suitcase shut, Mrs. Clare walked in, gasping softly. "Madam, are you leaving?" Maya nodded, tears burning her eyes. "I can't stay here anymore." The older woman's eyes softened. "Do you need help?" "No. I just need courage." Maya took a shaky breath. "And distance." Mrs. Clare hugged her briefly, whispering, "Go and find yourself. You are a beautiful woman, Maya. You just forgot it." Those words became the wind behind Maya's first real step into freedom. She left the keys on the table, walked out of the mansion, and didn't look back. Not once. Ethan didn't notice she was gone until 2 days later. When he walked into the house, the silence felt different, colder. He frowned and called out, "Maya?" Nothing. He checked the bedroom. Empty. The closet. Her clothes still there, but the suitcase gone. The kitchen. No steaming tea, no warm smile. A strange unease settled in his chest. He called her again, louder. "Maya." Still nothing. It wasn't worry he felt, at least that's what he told himself. It was confusion. Annoyance. Irritation. He called her phone. Switched off. He muttered under his breath, pacing. Where could she possibly go? Mrs. Clare watched him quietly from the doorway. He snapped. "You." "Did she say anything?" "Yes," she said softly. "She said she needed to find herself." Ethan scoffed. "What does that even mean?" "It means," she replied, "you broke her." The words hit him harder than he expected. "I didn't." He stopped. He couldn't even finish the sentence. Because deep down he knew. He knew exactly what he'd done. And yet, he didn't chase her. He didn't search for her. He told himself she'd come back once she calmed down. Once she realized she had no one but him. Once she remembered he was the best she could get. He poured himself a drink, muttering, "She'll be back." He was wrong. Maya didn't look back. Not even once. She took a bus to the next city, alone, trembling, terrified, but also strangely free. For the first time in her life, she didn't feel like she was shrinking. She felt like she was breathing. And though she didn't know it yet, the woman she would become would ignite a fire Ethan never imagined she could carry. A fire bright enough to blind him. A fire he would one day fall to his knees before. But that transformation was still far ahead. For now, Maya sat on the bus with her suitcase on her lap and whispered to herself, "This isn't the end. This is the beginning." And she was right. She had no idea just how powerful that beginning would become. Maya's life in the new city started quietly. She rented a small apartment above a bakery that smelled of fresh bread and vanilla. She took odd jobs during the day, worked at the bakery in the morning, and in the evenings she began the painstaking process of rebuilding herself. Not just her confidence, but her entire identity. Every morning, she looked into the cracked mirror in her tiny bathroom and whispered, "I will be more than what they think of me. I will be more than him." She started small. Jogging, stretching, learning to move her body like it belonged to her. She bought books on style and grooming, watched tutorials on makeup, practiced in the evenings until she could walk into a room and feel invisible no longer. At the bakery, she learned everything, from making pastries to managing inventory. She took meticulous notes in her pink notebook, the same one Ethan had once complimented. But now it wasn't about impressing anyone, it was about mastering her craft. One evening, exhausted after closing, Maya received a notification on her phone. A stranger had tagged her in a video she didn't remember posting. Curious, she clicked. Her jaw dropped. It was footage of her wedding day. Ethan laughing, holding her hand, whispering the words that had shattered her, "Easiest 5 million I'll ever make." Her hands shook. Somewhere deep inside, a new kind of fury was born. She had thought she could leave quietly, rebuild quietly, disappear quietly. But someone powerful, was watching. And she realized, with sudden clarity, that leaving wasn't enough. She had to come back. But not as the girl he once mocked. As someone he would never forget. Over the next few months, Maya worked harder than she ever had. She networked with small business owners, pitched ideas, and began building her own brand. She called it Thompson Delights, a nod to her late mother's family name, a quiet homage to where she came from, and a subtle hint of who she was becoming. The first few investors laughed at her. A plus-size, shy, unpolished woman? With nothing but a small bakery recipe? Impossible. But Maya had learned something they hadn't. Fearlessness wasn't about being loud. It was about being relentless. She didn't just open a bakery. She built an experience. Baking classes. Online tutorials. Social media posts that revealed her journey, her struggles, her triumphs. People connected with her, not because she was perfect but because she was real. Then the twist came. One evening as she was closing the bakery, a black car rolled to a stop outside. The window lowered. A man in a sharp suit stepped out. He was young, handsome, but there was something calculating in his eyes. "Miss Thompson?" he asked. "Yes." Maya replied cautiously, her hands gripping the counter. "I've been following your growth," he said. "You're impressive. I'd like to invest. But I need a guarantee that you're serious." Maya's heart skipped. She wanted to ask who he was, but something told her not to. Instead, she nodded, hiding the surge of excitement. "Meet me tomorrow," he said, handing her a card. "We'll discuss the terms. Big money. Big potential." Before she could respond, the car sped away. Maya stared after it, her mind racing. Who was he? Why did he appear now? And why did it feel like her entire life was about to shift again? This time, faster than she was ready for. That night, as she lay awake, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone had pulled a string she didn't even know existed. Something was coming. Something bigger than her fears, bigger than Ethan, bigger than the betrayal she thought she had escaped. Meanwhile, Ethan's life was spiraling. He couldn't explain the hollow ache that haunted him. He walked into his office one morning to find a series of emails he didn't send, inquiries about his company he didn't authorize, messages hinting that someone, or something, was threatening his empire. He laughed nervously, telling his assistant, "It's probably just hackers. Nothing to worry about." But worry gripped him like a vice. Then came the first glimpse of her, on social media. A bakery, a woman, a story he recognized immediately. It was Maya. Her face had changed. She was radiant, confident, glowing in a way that made his stomach twist. And she smiled, calm, serene, untouchable. Ethan felt a chill. "She's thriving without me." But that wasn't the worst part. She was thriving and she knew. The next day, an envelope arrived at his office. Thick, black, embossed with a symbol he didn't recognize. Inside was a single photograph. It was of Maya in a boardroom, signing a contract with the man in the black car. Her expression was composed, triumphant. And beneath it, a single line written in bold. "This is just the beginning." Ethan's hands shook. He dropped the envelope. Heart pounding. He backed away from the desk, staring at the photo like it held a hidden curse. He thought he had left her behind. He thought the bet, the joke, the marriage, everything, was over. But it wasn't. Not even close. Maya was no longer the girl who had silently endured his cruelty. She was a storm he couldn't control. A fire he couldn't extinguish. And she was coming for something he didn't even realize he had lost. As night fell, Ethan sat alone in his office, replaying every word he had ever said to her. Every joke. Every dismissal. Every laugh. Every smirk. And somewhere in the back of his mind, he knew he had underestimated her. He didn't know what she had planned. He didn't know how far she had gone. But he felt it, like a shadow over his life, a warning he couldn't ignore. And then, the final message arrived. A video. It opened with Maya standing in the same mansion he had once taken her from. Her face was cold, unyielding, her voice calm, but the words cut sharper than any blade. "I hope you remember me, Ethan Hale. Because soon, you'll realize you've been playing the wrong game all along." The screen went black. Ethan dropped the phone. His pulse raced. His world narrowed to a single thought. She's back. And this time, she wasn't the girl he had married for a bet. Ethan couldn't sleep. Every tick of the clock felt like a countdown, every shadow on the wall a reminder that she was out there, somewhere, plotting, thriving, and laughing quietly at him. He had always believed that wealth, influence, and charm could control the world, but suddenly the rules had changed. The girl he had taken for granted, the one he thought he had won with a bet, was rewriting the game entirely. He spent the entire night scrolling through social media, desperate to find more about her. Every post, every video, every mention of Thompson delights made his stomach churn. She had grown, not just physically but into someone formidable. She held herself with a confidence that made him feel small, inadequate, exposed. And she smiled in every post, as though daring him to remember the man who once mocked her. The morning brought no relief. Ethan's assistant, confused by his restless pacing, asked cautiously, "Sir, is everything okay?" "I'm fine," he muttered, but his eyes betrayed him. He wasn't fine. Not remotely. He wasn't just fine. He was terrified, terrified that Maya had become more than he could ever control. More than he had ever imagined. He realized that in trying to win a bet, he had created his own reckoning. Meanwhile, Maya was preparing for another pivotal meeting. The man in the black car, Mr. Lawson, had invested heavily, not just money but connections. He had seen her potential from the very beginning and had become her silent partner, guiding her business into uncharted territories. Today she would finalize the expansion deal that could catapult her brand into a national chain. As she walked into the boardroom, every step echoed her newfound confidence. She glanced at her reflection in the polished glass door and caught a glimpse of the woman she had fought to become. The timid girl who once trembled under Ethan's dismissive gaze was gone. In her place stood a woman who commanded respect, who radiated power, who could break a man's ego with a single look. Ethan, on the other hand, was oblivious to the storm gathering in his life. He was at the office trying to focus on a merger with a partner he didn't fully trust. But every ding of his phone made his heart race. Another notification. Another update about Thompson Delights. Another post with her radiant face. Another reminder that she had escaped him completely, and thrived. By late afternoon, Ethan's curiosity and fear reached a tipping point. He couldn't resist. He had to see her. He had to witness the woman she had become, even if it meant humiliation. Without telling anyone, he booked a flight to her city under the guise of business meetings. The truth was simpler. He needed to see her. He needed to feel control. And deep down he feared losing it forever. Maya, unaware of Ethan's sudden appearance, was rehearsing her pitch for the expansion deal. Lawson leaned back in his chair, a smirk tugging at his lips. "You're ready," he said. "Remember, don't just present numbers. Present power. Show them who owns this room." She nodded, feeling the weight of his advice. She had worked tirelessly for this moment, and she wasn't about to falter. Today she would not be the girl who cried behind the staircase. Today she would be the queen of her own story. As she began her presentation, she didn't notice the tall, imposing figure who had just entered the room. Ethan's presence was quiet at first, blending in with the other investors. But when her eyes met his across the room, she froze. Not because she recognized him, though she did, but because she realized he had watched from the doorway, silent, like a shadow haunting her. Her pulse quickened. She continued speaking, voice steady, but every word carried a subtle warning. She had grown, and he was no longer the center of her world. Ethan, on the other hand, felt a mix of awe and panic. He had underestimated her. Every calculated move he had made to control her now felt meaningless. After the presentation, Lawson excused himself, leaving Maya alone with the investors. Ethan stepped forward, clearing his throat. "Maya," he said, voice low and cautious. It's been a while." She turned slowly, a faint smile curving her lips. "Ethan," she replied evenly, her eyes cold and assessing. "It has." The room seemed to hold its breath. Investors whispered quietly among themselves, sensing the tension between the two. Ethan swallowed hard. I didn't expect, you've grown? I mean, this business you. Maya held up a hand, silencing him effortlessly. "Yes, I've grown. And yes, the business is thriving. But let me be clear, I didn't do it for you. I did it for me." Ethan's throat went dry. He opened his mouth, then closed it. He wanted to argue, to charm, to apologize. But nothing came out. The woman who had once been timid and shy now radiated authority, confidence, and power. Everything he thought he owned, everything he thought he could manipulate was gone. Then, just as he thought he had regained composure, a notification buzzed on her phone. She glanced at it and her eyes widened slightly. Ethan followed her gaze. It was a text from an unknown number. "Everything is in motion. He doesn't know yet. Prepare for him to see the truth." Maya's fingers trembled as she typed a quick response. "I'm ready. He'll never see it coming." Ethan noticed her hand, the intensity in her eyes, the subtle but unmistakable control she wielded over the room. He realized with a sudden pang of fear that he had walked straight into a trap, but he didn't know what the trap was yet. And then the boardroom doors opened behind him. A group of men entered, all in sharp suits, all carrying documents stamped with legal seals. One of them stepped forward, handing Maya a thick folder. "These are the finalized agreements for your acquisition. Every clause, every contract, signed and ready. Your competitors won't know what hit them." Maya looked at the folder, then at Ethan. Her lips curved into a faint, almost imperceptible smile. "This," she said softly but with deadly certainty, "is just the beginning." Ethan felt a chill run down his spine. He had no idea what she meant, but instinctively he knew it wasn't good for him. And then, as if to drive the point home, Maya's phone buzzed again. Another message. She opened it. Her eyes flickered for a moment, a shadow crossing her face, before she tapped a response and placed the phone down deliberately where Ethan could see. Soon you'll realize you didn't win. You never did. Ethan's pulse quickened. His mind raced. The familiar thrill of control, of dominance, was slipping through his fingers like sand. He opened his mouth, tried to speak, but the room suddenly felt too small, too silent, too heavy with anticipation. Maya walked past him, heading toward the elevator. Every step she took was a declaration. She was moving forward, leaving him behind, and he was powerless to stop her. As the elevator doors closed, Ethan felt something he hadn't felt in years: fear. Real sharp, biting fear. And he knew without a doubt that his world was about to change. But he didn't yet know how far she had planned to go, or how deep the trap would reach. He didn't know that what awaited him would destroy everything he thought he controlled. And he didn't know that by the time he realized it, it would already be too late. Ethan didn't leave the building that day. He stood frozen outside the boardroom, replaying every message, every glance, every subtle motion Maya had made. He had underestimated her, underestimated the fire she carried, underestimated the consequence of his own arrogance. For the first time in his life he felt completely unmoored. He tried to rationalize. She's just a businesswoman now. She can't hurt me, can she? But even as he said it, he knew it was a lie. He remembered the girl who had cried behind the staircase, the girl who had silently endured humiliation, and he realized she had transformed that pain into something he could never break. Meanwhile, Maya returned to her office, shutting the door behind her, and let out a slow breath. She didn't allow herself relief yet. She knew Ethan's presence meant her next steps had to be careful, calculated. She had worked for months to rebuild herself, and now it was time to solidify her power, not just in business but in life. The acquisition meeting had been only the first act. Maya now had the confidence and resources to make her mark. She started drafting new partnerships, planning expansions, ensuring every competitor, every investor, and every skeptical voice was impressed, or intimidated. And deep down she also knew she had Ethan watching. She could feel it. Ethan tried to reach her that evening. His calls went unanswered. His texts remained unread. And for the first time he felt the sting of powerlessness. He had always been the predator, the one in control. And now, for the first time, he was waiting, hoping, fearing, completely at the mercy of someone he had once mocked. Days passed. Maya continued to thrive, her business growing faster than anyone had expected. And then came the unexpected, a charity gala invitation. It was one of Ethan's favorite events, the kind where billionaires and socialites flaunted wealth and power. Maya accepted, fully aware that Ethan would be there. The night of the gala arrived. Ethan walked in, confident at first, expecting to see a timid, familiar face. But the moment he scanned the room, he froze. There she was. Maya. Stunning, poised, radiant. Every eye turned toward her as she entered, a silent wave of presence commanding attention. She didn't glance at him immediately. She let the room feel her, let every whisper acknowledge her transformation. Only then did her eyes meet his. Ethan's breath caught. He tried to approach, but his steps felt heavy, clumsy. She moved through the crowd with ease, every gesture deliberate, every glance controlled. He had never seen her like this, never imagined the sheer force of her presence. Finally, she stopped a few feet away from him. The music swelled around them, conversations fading into background noise. "Ethan," she said softly, but her voice carried authority, power, and a trace of amusement. "Maya?" he began, then stopped. Words failed him. She smiled faintly. "It's been a journey." He wanted to argue, to apologize, to explain, but he realized he had nothing to say that could undo the months of pain he had caused. I didn't," he tried again. She shook her head. "No, don't. This isn't about apologies. This is about reality. The reality is you lost. And I won, not because of money or business or status, but because I chose to rise while you chose to mock." Ethan's chest tightened. He wanted to speak, to convince her that he had changed, that he had realized his mistakes, but she cut him off with a glance sharp enough to silence the room. "I forgive you, Ethan. But forgiveness doesn't mean returning to the past. It means I walk forward, and you stay where you are." The sting of her words hit harder than he expected. He opened his mouth, but she was already moving away, her posture regal, untouchable. He watched her disappear into the crowd, realizing that she was gone, not physically but emotionally and spiritually. She had risen above him, above everything he had taken for granted. That night Ethan sat alone, replaying the last year in his mind. He had been cruel, thoughtless, arrogant. And now he understood. Maya's glow-up wasn't just physical. It wasn't just business success. It was a complete reclamation of herself, a statement that no man, no wealth, no bet could define her. Maya, back in her penthouse office, looked out at the city skyline. The gala had been a success, but the real victory wasn't applause or contracts. It was knowing that she had transformed pain into power, betrayal into opportunity, mockery into triumph. She whispered to herself, "I am unstoppable. And nothing, no one, can take this away from me." Somewhere in the city, Ethan sat with the weight of realization pressing down. He had underestimated the girl he married for a bet. He had thought she was fragile, manipulable, and small. He was wrong. She had been building her empire silently, deliberately, until she was unrecognizable, both in appearance and in strength. He knew he could never go back. And yet, a small part of him couldn't stop thinking about her. About the way she had once looked at him with trust and hope. About the warmth he had taken for granted. About the woman he had lost before she even left the room. Maya had left him nothing but lessons, that underestimating someone is a fatal mistake, that cruelty carries consequences, and that real power comes from within, not from wealth or status. And as the city lights glittered like stars around him, Ethan realized that the girl he had married for a dare had become the woman who would forever leave him speechless. But the story wasn't over yet. There was still one final act, one last confrontation where the full consequences of the bet, the betrayal, and the transformation would come to light. Ethan didn't know it yet, but when that final moment came, it would redefine both their lives forever. The night of the final meeting arrived. Maya had invited Ethan to the grand opening of her flagship bakery, a decision calculated but also brave. She knew he would come. She had left the door open, not for reconciliation, not for forgiveness, but for acknowledgement. For him to see the woman she had become and understand, once and for all, that she was no longer the girl he could control or mock. The bakery was alive with light, laughter, and the scent of fresh pastries. Investors mingled with journalists. Social media influencers documented every moment. And at the center of it all, Maya moved like a queen, calm, confident, untouchable. Ethan walked in, nervous for the first time in his life. The polished halls, the glimmering displays, the crowds, all of it should have been familiar. But it wasn't. She was different. The power in her gaze, the sway of her posture, the authority in her words, it was undeniable. He realized painfully that he had stepped into her world, not his. She noticed him immediately. Their eyes met across the room and the air seemed to tighten. Maya approached slowly, deliberately. Every step was measured. She stopped a few feet from him, letting the room feel the tension, letting Ethan feel the full weight of what he had lost. "Maya," he breathed, voice barely audible over the chatter. She smiled faintly, a smile that didn't reach her eyes. "Ethan, I wasn't sure you'd come. I had to see you. The bakery, the business, everything," he faltered, realizing no words could capture the enormity of her transformation. She held up a hand, stopping him. "Don't try to explain. Don't apologize. What's done is done. You married me for a bet. That's a fact. And I turned that betrayal into my strength." He swallowed hard, guilt flooding him. "I was wrong. I never should have." Her gaze softened slightly, but only slightly. "I know," she said. "And I forgive you, not because you deserve it, but because I refuse to let your actions hold power over my life anymore. My life belongs to me now." Ethan looked around at the bustling bakery, at the thriving business, the employees, the smiling customers. He realized that she had not only built a brand but had reclaimed her life in ways he could never touch. And he understood in that moment that the bet had not just failed him, it had created a woman he could no longer influence, a force he could never control. Maya continued, her voice calm but unwavering. "Ethan, do you see now why I left? Do you see why walking away was the only way I could survive?" "Yes," he whispered. "I do. I see it now, more than I ever did before." She nodded, satisfied. "Good. Then let that be enough. I'm no longer the girl you married for a bet. I am me. And you, well, you have to live with that truth." For the first time, Ethan felt humility. Real, raw humility. The arrogance, the pride, the ego, they all fell away. He had never experienced this before and it left him speechless. He nodded, accepting it. Maya smiled faintly, then turned to attend to the guests. Ethan watched her move, graceful and commanding, a woman transformed not just in appearance but in soul, in strength, in purpose. Days passed and Ethan began to change. He could no longer see people as objects, as bets, as pawns in his game. He started reflecting on his actions, reached out to charities and tried to mend broken bridges, not with Maya, not with expectation but with sincerity. Maya, meanwhile, expanded her business nationally. She never forgot the pain of the past, but she used it as a lesson, a shield, and a motivator. She gave talks about resilience, self-worth, and empowerment, inspiring thousands who had ever been belittled or underestimated. Then came a quiet afternoon. Maya received a letter, not from Ethan, but from a young girl who had watched her journey online. She read, "I thought I was ugly, unworthy, invisible. But seeing you rise, it gave me hope. Thank you." Maya smiled, her heart full. She realized that her glow-up wasn't just for herself. It had a ripple effect. Every tear she had cried, every moment of doubt, every silent night she had spent rebuilding herself, it had mattered. Ethan, alone in his office, reflected on what he had lost. He realized that the money, the fame, the bet, all of it was meaningless compared to the lessons Maya had embodied: resilience, dignity, and the power of self-worth. He sent a single message to her, not to reconcile, not to regain, but to acknowledge. "I understand now. Thank you for showing me." Maya read it, nodded to herself, and replied with one word: "Welcome." It wasn't about him. It was about closure, for both of them. A final acknowledgement that the past had shaped them but would not define them. And as she closed her bakery for the night, standing in the glow of the neon lights, Maya felt complete. The girl who had been humiliated, abandoned, and underestimated had emerged as a woman who could not be ignored, silenced, or controlled. Ethan never forgot her, not the girl he married, not the woman she had become. But he also understood that some victories were not meant to be won by wealth, power, or bets. They were meant to be earned through courage, resilience, and self-belief. Maya looked at the city skyline one last time that night and whispered, softly but firmly, "I am enough. I always was." And with that, the story closed, not with a reconciliation, not with revenge, but with triumph, empowerment, and the undeniable truth that the girl he once mocked had become a woman who left him and the world speechless. Thank you for watching. Kindly like, subscribe to our channel to watch more interesting stories. Also, we will love to know in the comments section where you are watching from. New York, London, maybe South Africa, Nigeria, or Jamaica? We want to know.